Welcome to Carnivore Wellness. My name's Rebecca, and today I'm talking about what you can eat on a carnivore diet. First of all, what is a carnivore diet? It is a meat-based diet where you eat meat and animal products. It's very simple, but let's break that down a little bit further. What kind of meat can you eat on a carnivore diet? Well, pretty much any kind of animal that is out there. You can have beef, bison, venison, elk, caribou, antelope, goat, lamb, pork, chicken, turkey, pheasant, duck. You can also eat things like eggs, which are very nutrient dense, and some carnivores do very well with including. You can also have fish and seafood, so things like salmon, cod, tuna, trout, sardines, oysters, shrimp, lobster, scallops, and mussels. All of those are fair game on a carnivore diet. You can even eat some animal-based foods, things like dairy. Lots of carnivores enjoy incorporating butter and cheese on a semi-regular basis. Not everyone, but some. And others are even able to include a wider range of those animal-based products, things like heavy whipping cream, sour cream, plain yogurt, especially like a whole Greek yogurt, cottage cheese or cream cheese, ricotta cheese, things of that nature. Now, in doing so, you want to make sure that you double check the ingredients to really make sure that you're not ingesting any kind of additives, preservatives, or hidden sugars in those products. But again, meat, eggs, and animal products, especially in the form of dairy, are all included on a carnivore diet. With a focus on ruminant meat, it's important to say that most carnivores find that they feel best when they include ruminant meat. Now, what is ruminant meat? Which animals does that come from? So that's going to be primarily your beef and your lamb. Of course, it's also things like bison, elk, caribou, deer, venison, goat even. All of those are ruminant animals. The typical meats that are included in a carnivore diet that are not from ruminant animals are things like pork and chicken, duck, and things like that. But by and large, the ruminant animals, that meat is what should make up the bulk of your diet because that is really what helps round out the full nutritional profile and give you what you need to feel your best. Now, in doing so, it's important to remember that fats are key in this way of eating. So when we transition to a carnivore diet, we are getting our energy primarily from the fat in our foods. So the protein goes to serve as building blocks for, repair and maintenance for our bodies. However, we operate on fat. That is where our energy needs are met. So it's important to incorporate fatty cuts of meat. Many people do this by eating things like ribeye, brisket, skirt steak, or short ribs. Those are all very fatty cuts of meat. And of course, you can always add additional healthy animal fats, things like tallow, which is rendered beef fat, lard, which is rendered pork fat, or ghee, which is essentially butter with the milk solids removed, and even things like duck fat. So pretty much any fat that comes from an animal is fair game for adding to a carnivore diet. It is not advisable to use anything like olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Those all come from plants, and really you're best off getting your healthy saturated fats from animal sources. Now, what about organ meats? Do you have to eat nose to tail? The answer is no, not necessarily. You can, and many people do, and enjoy incorporating organs into their carnivore diets, but it is not required. There are several carnivores who are thriving without incorporating organ meats. Now, if you want to incorporate organ meats, you can start with things like the heart, which is actually pretty delicious. It tastes pretty much just like a mussel. Essentially, that's what the heart is. So that's a great way to ease into your organ meats. But a lot of folks want to incorporate liver, and liver has a pretty, noticeable taste. So, you can either freeze that, cut it up into tiny cubes and kind of swallow it like you would a multivitamin, or you can incorporate, chopped up pieces of liver into, say, ground beef burger patties. I've done that with some success in the past. But by and large, I don't include organ meats like many carnivores. If it's a take it or leave it kind of thing, I just don't exactly have the palate for organ meats. So I don't include those, and you don't have to either. That said, they're always available for you, especially if you enjoy the taste and the variety that those bring. Now, what about processed meats? Can you include those in a carnivore diet? Yes, you can, and you may want to do so, especially if you are new to the meat-based eating world, because those foods will offer some variety and also oftentimes are a lot easier to take on the go. So when you are trying to figure out what you can take, say, with you to work or on a little road trip or something, those processed meats can come in handy. Those are things like deli meats, ham, turkey, or some sausages, or some pepperonis, meat sticks, things like that. Even bacon is technically processed. You can find it without a ton of additives. And I highly recommend that in looking to purchase all of these kind of processed meat items, be sure that you read the ingredients list. There are oftentimes hidden sources of sugar or high fructose corn syrup or monosodium glutamate or BHT, a preservative that's not great for you, hiding in these ingredient lists. So make sure you take time to really look over those ingredients and pick the cleanest option that you can. Of course, some people do best by keeping all of these processed meats out of their carnivore diets. You've got to think about where you want to go health-wise, what your goals are for your health and healing, and use that to help you determine how strict you want to be in your approach to a meat-based diet. So again, it's up to each individual. You can include these, but I would recommend that you include them in moderation. They also tend to be more hyper-palatable foods that you can enjoy eating and perhaps eat past the point of satiety. Again, this is where mindful eating practices come into play and can be really helpful in helping you regulate exactly how much your body is asking for and making sure that you are meeting your body's needs, but not exceeding them because something just happens to be extra tasty due to, extra spices, seasonings, or additives in those products. All right, now what about artificial sweeteners? It's technically, calorie-free, there's no sugar. Can you include those? Well, you're all grown adults if you're watching this, and you can choose to do what you want to do. That said, I do not recommend artificial sweeteners. One, they will allow that sweet taste to continue to linger in your palate. And that is a slippery slope, especially for folks like me who are really recovering sugar addicts. There have been times in life where I have been unable to stop eating because I have been chasing that sweet taste. And artificial sweeteners will allow that grip of that sweetness from sugar or sugar replacements to hang around. Also, it again leads to making foods more hyperpalatable. You eat more than you need. You're not able to follow your body's hunger cues because that sweetness overrides your body's hunger cues, and really just we're programmed to want more and more sweet things because those are very, energy dense foods. However, we're no longer living in a scarcity, food situation, so we don't need to ingest those sugary things to provide for our body's nutrient needs. We can get by with everything that we need just from meat, and especially if you're including other animal-based products, you've got plenty of variety. Leave the artificial sweeteners out of it. It will just keep those cravings lingering, which will make it much harder for you to continue to adhere to this way of eating. You will find as you eliminate all sweet taste from your diet that within just a few weeks, your palate and your taste for food changes dramatically. The simplest foods, a ribeye steak with a little bit of salt is so flavorful that your mouth is watering and bursting with flavor. You don't need all these other additives. You really will find that your food tastes amazing without anything else. All right, now in the same line as artificial sweeteners, what about honey? Can you incorporate honey? Technically, it comes from bees, doesn't that make it an animal-based food? Well, maybe technically, but not really, because that honey is processed by the bees from the nectar in the flower, in the fruiting body of the plant. So really, it comes from plants, and as mentioned, because it's from the fruiting body, it's really high in fructose. So even if it doesn't necessarily, alter your glucose, blood glucose levels as significantly, it's still very rich in fructose, which is processed by the liver. Again, this is just not an ideal food, and it is going to continue to keep that taste for sweet things alive. It is going to make it much harder for you to resist cravings when you continue to keep these sweet tastes in your diet. So I highly recommend keeping honey out of your diet. You don't need it. What about spices and seasonings? Well, this is again more so in lines with your personal choice in what you want out of a carnivore diet. For strict carnivores, they don't include spices and seasonings other than salt. However, many carnivores are able to continue to incorporate spices and seasonings without any issue. So this kind of depends on you and your situation. So if you really want a strict carnivore diet, you want to completely eliminate anything that might be inflammatory into your diet, then maybe it's best off not having those spices and seasonings. However, like I said, many people enjoy continuing to incorporate those, and it provides them with variety, and they enjoy that. I personally don't incorporate spices and seasonings for this one reason. When I eat spices and seasonings, say in a little bit of sausage or something, the next day I have very noticeable body odor. Whereas when I do not regularly eat seasonings and spices, I have no body odor. So that to me is enough of an indicator of that feedback that those foods aren't best for my body. So I keep those out of my diet. But again, you've got to make that decision for yourself and see what serves you best. So spices and seasonings, yes, they're okay. Make sure that you are incorporating those in a way that is in alignment with your health and wellness goals. What about coffee and tea? Same sort of thing there. It's up to you. So many carnivores continue to include coffee and tea, and they have fantastic healing results. That doesn't seem to hold them back. That said, other carnivores choose to eliminate it because they are, of course, derived from plants. So that choice is yours. I will say, if you dread the idea of giving up your coffee and tea and that will prevent you from becoming carnivore, then please, by all means, please keep your coffee or your tea. Don't let that be a barrier for you for not enjoying a carnivore diet and all of the healing that can come from this way of eating. So instead, keep your coffee. I would suggest that if you are one of those people who struggles to eat breakfast first thing in the morning, or you really kind of don't have much of an appetite, if you think you might be under eating, save that coffee or tea instead of first thing in the morning before eating food. Save it for after your first meal. Save it for a dessert type placement in your food choices so that you don't have that coffee or tea dampening your hunger signals. Again, tuning into your hunger signals is really important for making sure that you are fully nourishing your body on this way of eating. And I will note that even within the realm of the carnivore foods that we've talked about here that are appropriate for a carnivore diet, there are a few things I want to mention just because some folks can be sensitive to things like eggs. So for example, some people can't have eggs at all, but some are able to tolerate the yolk of the egg, which is actually great because it's the fatty part of the egg, but they cannot tolerate the egg whites. That can cause some issue for them, especially in their initial phase of their healing journey. So you may find that you perhaps cannot tolerate the egg whites. Another one that folks struggle with sometimes is dairy. Some folks cannot tolerate dairy, and perhaps they don't necessarily know this going into the carnivore diet because they've been consuming all sorts of other foods and the body is widespread inflammation. And in slowly tapering down and reducing those other inflammatory foods, suddenly there's that realization that the dairy is still a problem. So dairy can be problematic for some people, and even and a lot of folks who are not able to tolerate dairy are still able to tolerate butter. So that may be a place where you need to experiment for yourself to see if butter works for you. But there are some who really cannot have the butter either and could instead have ghee with the milk solids removed. And some folks, even then, that's just still slightly too inflammatory. So it is up to you to do your own experimenting to figure out what works best for you. And the carnivore diet is a great way, a great tool to use as an elimination diet to really figure out what best serves you, your body, your health and wellness needs as you progress. Now, ultimately, this way of eating can be termed an elimination diet, especially as you're talking to other folks as you start this way of eating. That may be the easiest way to explain it to other people. Instead of calling it a carnivore diet, call it an elimination diet. I'm eliminating all these things so that when I slowly reintroduce foods, I can see how my body reacts. So, when we eliminate the grains and all the plants, vegetables, things that have a bunch of anti-nutrients in them, we are able to instead allow our body's, immune systems and response systems to calm down and then focus on repair. So some people even take it a step further and they go on a very strict elimination diet that is called the Lion Diet, where the focus is on ruminant meat, salt, and water, and nothing else, no seasoning, spices, etc. And that is the ultimate elimination diet in that you're just getting ruminant meat, which is pretty much well understood as the easiest meat to process with, the least amount of inflammation. And so that is what's ideal. That said, you don't have to adopt the very most strict version of carnivore in order to succeed and experience health and healing progress. So just know that this way of eating is extremely anti-inflammatory. Now, what about how much to eat? How do you know how much to eat on a carnivore diet? Well, the main thing is that you need to tune in to your own hunger and follow your hunger signals. That said, many carnivores find that they feel good eating around 1.5 to 2 pounds of meat a day. Now, that is just a ballpark suggestion, and that's normally for carnivores who are in more of a maintenance mode, who have already undergone the healing and repair phase that is really a necessary step in navigating and adapting to this way of eating. So, consider how you feel when you sit down to eat. Now, oftentimes new carnivores undereat because the carnivore diet foods are very protein dense. They're rich in nutrients. They're very satiating. So sometimes it can be hard to eat enough on a carnivore diet. So to ensure that you don't undereat when you're first starting a carnivore diet, it is suggested that you eat until you are comfortably stuffed. That works for most people. However, I will just throw out there that if you happen to have a history of binge eating until you're comfortably stuffed may be eating significantly more than people who perhaps do not have that history of binge eating behavior. So for folks with that kind of a background, you might want to be a bit more mindful. And in fact, I suggest mindful eating in trying to figure out how much to eat, as it is a great tool for figuring out exactly what it is that your body needs and when your body is full and is ready to stop. So that said, eat until you're comfortably stuffed and follow your hunger cues to know when to eat. And then also make sure that you are eating mindfully if you really want to optimize your body's level of feedback so that you tune into what you want to eat as far as how much protein and how much fat, and also how much you want to eat based on your body's own satiety signals. Now, I do always recommend that you start each day with breakfast. I think breakfast is really key, especially when you're first starting, because otherwise, like we mentioned, you have that tendency to undereat. But getting the day started with breakfast first thing in the day, even if it's just a small breakfast, if you're not accustomed to a full meal at that time, can be very helpful in opening up your hunger and allowing you to really tune into your appetite and your nutrient needs for the day. So I recommend that. And other than that, it really is largely up to each individual as to how much they need to eat on a carnivore diet. So when you're first starting, you may be under eating, and you may eventually find that your hunger increases, in which case continue to follow that hunger. Some folks, especially as they are in the early stages of healing, need to eat significantly more than that recommended 1.5 to 2 pounds a day. Some folks end up eating upwards of 2 times or even 3 times that amount in order to fully nourish their bodies and allow their bodies to get to a place of health and healing. Worry about the body recomposition, the fat loss later, after your body has healed. Remember, this is a healing first approach to optimizing your health and wellness. All right, now, just because you're saying goodbye to the standard American diet or some other version of this your way of eating that is not necessarily totally meat-based, there are a couple of swaps that you can make that are still technically carnivore friendly. So there's carnivore pizzas, which essentially use a chicken, egg, and cheese crust topped with carnivore toppings, or things like chaffles, which are cheesy waffles. Again, those are pretty much a combination of cheese, eggs, and butter, or you can even swap out the cheese for a pork panko, which is essentially crushed pork rinds. And then things like a carnivore cake, believe it or not. Kelly Hogan is known for her carnivore oopsie cake, and that's essentially made with separated eggs, so the whipped egg whites really give a fluffy texture to the final product, mixed with some cream cheese and then topped with a heavy whipping cream as an icing. There are a couple of substitutions, but really by and large you will find that as you eat this way, you are satisfied with just the whole cuts of meat. and enjoying meat and occasionally some eggs and occasionally some dairy if that is tolerated for you and meet your health and wellness goals. So if you want access to some more recipes or meal suggestions, tips, etc., or if you would like to have access to a full e-course for free that walks you through the carnivore diet process step by step, then you are welcome to join the Carnivore Wellness Community, where I have set up a space full of resources to help new carnivores get started on their health and wellness journey so that they can achieve optimal health and healing and unlock their primal potential. So I will put that link down in the description box below so you can check that out. And if you want to take it a step further and engage more with a wider community and enjoy some face-to-face interactions with some live Zoom calls, we host weekly meetings, 3 weekly meetings a week, where we talk about all things carnivore and folks share their own experiences. We kind of troubleshoot and help one another out when we have some setbacks or struggles, and even set our action steps and intentions for the upcoming week so that we can stay on track with where we want to go. And those are all available with a premium membership. For less than $1 a day, you can have access to essentially small group coaching sessions where you get the chance to speak up, ask your questions, have your concerns addressed, and gain the support and accountability that comes with being directly involved in a community. So that is all available. Again, it's through that link to join the Carnivore Wellness Community. I hope to see you there. And for now, just enjoy a lovely meat-fueled day. Goodbye, my friends.